Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Super excited to have everyone here. And we are going to just wait a few seconds for people to log on. And in the meantime, we'll just sit here quietly and rock our bodies back and forth to prepare. My room is super cold, so I might do a little bit of shaking and wiggling until people show up. All right. I think people are starting to trickle in. We have people trickling in from both our LinkedIn pages and our Facebook channels, which is amazing. So I think it's good time to kick off. So welcome everyone to today's webinar. It's a great honor to be hosting this session, which is on Vietnamese HealthTech, and we dubbed it "What's the Diagnosis?" Essentially saying what's rattling and shaking in this space, and we have three of the best people in the market to essentially ask. So that's amazing. I think this is the pandemic that everyone has been affected by is one of the things that I think have connected the global community more than maybe other events in the past couple of decades, actually. So every one of us has been affected one way or another, and it's might also color the way we live and seek healthcare going forward. So it's a hot topic not only now, but also will be a hot topic continue for the next couple of years. Our view on health and how to best maintain a safe and healthy lifestyle has been put into focus over and over again over the last couple of years. And what we've seen here at Antler, we have our cohort kicking off, the first cohort kicking off now in Vietnam in the next couple of weeks. And we expected a lot of interest within kind of the staples, right? The e-commerce enablers, the fintechs of the world, and blockchain and AI and NFT gaming, given the recent successes coming out of Vietnam. But we've seen such a big interest from health tech in general, which has been amazing. So that's why we wanted to drop a panel for everyone to arrange this webinar. I am Eric Johnson. I'm the partner at Antler. So I'm responsible for all the investments we do here in Vietnam, our portfolio companies, and the programs we run. And super excited to have this panel today. With us, we have 𝗕𝗶𝗶𝗇, CEO and co-founder of Docosan, Dr. Mason Cobb, president of Victoria Healthcare International Clinics, and Hawkins Fan, co-creator of Reimagining Healthcare. For everyone joining us, health tech leaders, aspiring entrepreneurs, and potential investors, welcome to today's webinar. Please connect with the Antler team to learn more about what is discussed today and join our program on the 22nd November. There's still spots open, still apply, still get in. We want to shout out a special thanks to 𝗕𝗵𝗺, which is a network of co-working spaces in 7 countries, South Asia Pacific. They're hosting this with us today. If you're looking for a cool office space, I suggest you check it out. This is the format of this webinar. Essentially, we have a little bit of a discussion at the beginning, and then you can ask questions in the last 15 minutes of the event. So the way you do that essentially is to drop them in the comment section from wherever you're watching. And we will then raise them to our guests at the end of the session. Right, I would love now to go into introductions, and so you guys get to know a little bit more about the panelists we have today. Let's start with Beth. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Beth Ann Lopez, co-founder and CEO of Docosan. So Docosan is a health tech platform that is based in Ho Chi Minh City, and we have a presence throughout Vietnam. We make it easy to find and book a doctor, both online and offline, and over 30,000 different medical services that you can find the prices of, and compare the quality, and read real reviews by patients. And so Eric said that we get a couple of minutes to introduce ourselves. And so I think like for the rest of my minute, it'd be great if everyone here could just take out your phones from your pocket and then download Docosan. So just go ahead and open up the Apple or Google Play Store. Type in Docosan, it is Docosan, and check it out. So we've got some of the top doctors and clinics on the network, and if you ever need great healthcare, you'll find it at the push of a button.
It's amazing. I love growth hacking in a webinar. Beth. This is so cool. Everyone, please download the app. I'm downloading it as we speak. This is amazing. Thank you for that. Right, Dr. Mason, would you mind introducing yourself?
Thank you very much, Eric. My pleasure to be here. Victoria Healthcare's motto is patients first. We're basically a polyclinic. We're multi-specialty, but we specialize in outpatient care. In that, we also take care of the patient literally from the first day on through life. We put a high premium on health. That is, we're not about sick care, although we're very good at it, I hope, but we're more about how do you stay healthy as well. From the beginning, we seem to have been asking the same question. What do patients need when they see the doctor? We put the needs of each patient first and place them at the center of medical care. We call this the Victoria Way. Now, what brings us here today is high tech for high touch. This makes that is, technology can make the patient journey as efficient and easy as possible. At the end of the day, quality actually has two components. The first is obvious. Was the care competent and the highest quality standard? The technology can help us deliver that. But the second component is as important. That's how did this entire medical encounter make the patient feel? Without the patient's positive feeling about the encounter, the first one has very little meaning to them. So the technology has to allow for high tech for high touch. Technological solutions in healthcare allow for improvements in the delivery of the best experience for the patient and consequently the most value throughout the healthcare system. High tech allows us the high touch of more time for relating directly with our patients and understanding them more deeply. This means that technology in patient-facing healthcare has only two functions. First, to improve the quality of care and accessing the deepest and most conveniently delivered patient data possible for care. The second is to make the patient journey as positive and useful a hands-on experience as possible for them. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mason. And I will ask you a little bit more about this later. 𝗏𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐴ns, who are you and why are you passionate about health tech?
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for hosting. Thanks to Jeff and the Hive for co-collaborating on this. So again, my name is 𝗏𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐴ns and I'm co-creator of Reimagining Healthcare, which is envisioned as a multi-stakeholder forum for those passionate about transforming healthcare. I have been in Vietnam for 12 years. Most of that has been in investments. I was formerly with Mekong Capital. I've been involved in leading investments across a number of industries, but healthcare specific. I led an investment into Gene Solutions most recently. Those guys are transforming the way we look at genetics and diagnose certain diseases in reproductive health and cancer. I was a part of the early days of 𝗕𝗏𝐺𝐶, acting as their advisor. I was with Chris Blank when he had 35 stores. Now he has 600 plus. So I'm adept at the trials and tribulations of building large platforms in consumer retail focused on health. But my reason for having a mission to transform health is a personal one. About this time last year, October 2020, my daughter, my infant 2-month-old daughter, had open heart surgery in Vietnam. She was born with a congenital heart defect where, in layman's terms, she had a hole in her heart. And this journey from, being diagnosed with it prenatal and to surgery really opened up my eyes to the healthcare landscape in Vietnam and actually the inequities of accessing quality care. And I was very fortunate. Surgery was a success. She's now healthy and happy. But that really just woke me up to what's possible. And so I'm honored to be here with Dr. Mason, an old friend, and Beth, people that are transforming healthcare, and happy to share my views and thoughts to those willing to venture into being healthcare entrepreneurs themselves.
Thank you for that, Hawkins, and super happy to hear that your daughter is now fully recovered and happy and healthy. Amazing. Great. Let's go into question time. I've been looking forward to this so much. And I think, Beth, I want to start with you. The problem you chose to focus on when founding Docosan was making it easy to get medical care as it is to order a Grab. Why did you make this your mission? And is access one of the largest problems in Vietnamese healthcare today, do you think?
It is. And access to healthcare is more than just having a clinic nearby. It's being able to navigate the healthcare system. When I lived in Cambodia years ago, I needed to get an IUD. Even though I'd already worked in the healthcare sector, I just moved to Phnom Penh and I didn't know where to go. In the countryside, it was really easy and cheap, so I figured it would be easy and cheap in the city too. And so, like what most people do, based on word of mouth and Google alone, I chose what seemed to be one of the top clinics. But it turns out the cost ended up being multiple hundreds of dollars, and the two nurses who placed the device were literally reading the instructions as I was laying on the table. So it was very painful and it was a terrible experience, right? So years later, I'd been living in Vietnam and I had to get the device removed, but I still didn't know where to go. And I had the same exact problem. And so if I, who spent my entire career in Southeast Asia working in healthcare, didn't know where to go, how could other people? So it turns out this is a serious problem across Southeast Asia because the healthcare systems are fragmented, opaque, and there's no easy way to know what your options are at all. And so this problem is faced not only by me, but almost everyone here, from moms with sick kids, and even like we have a lot of young adults who use our platform, but they're afraid to talk to others because of like stigma that is preventing them from getting care. And so that's why I started Docosan, so we can have an open, transparent, fully vetted platform that everyone can use. And that's also why access to healthcare is the most important issue.
Amazing. And Beth, I would love, your branding, I think, is super on point. I would love for you just to share Docosan, how that name came about and what it means in Vietnamese as well.
Sure. So Docosan is a mixture of English and Vietnamese words. So it's doc is in doctor, and then Cosan is available in Vietnamese language. Because I come from the US originally, but Southeast Asia is my home, and we take ideas from both the US, abroad, and Vietnam, and we put them together to create this really innovative platform.
That's great. Dr. Mason, in terms of just that access, you have been in Vietnam for, 2 decades plus?
Yes.
What is your experience, and from Victoria's perspective as well, in terms of providing that access and trying to make a difference in that space?
Well, in our mission statement, we've embedded this, and that's that we want to offer the highest quality care possible for an affordable price. Now, unfortunately, as the country does ramp up in its standard of living, it can afford better health care. But as Hawkins has said, and as Beth has demonstrated, it's actually quite hard to access. And the math right now is ultimately not going to be sustainable. The public health system is so overloaded, so overcrowded, and so underfunded. People say it would take $80 billion, that's a quarter of GDP, in order to bring this up to the level of other middle-income countries. On the other hand, if you have the money and the insurance, then you can go to the private sector. And unfortunately, there are some in the private sector who I do believe are profiteering. But I will say this, we do try to offer at as reasonable a cost as we can, but we do things that the public sector really can't do. We invest a lot in education of our medical staff. In fact, all of our staff. We train people overseas. We bring overseas resources here to train. We spend a lot of our time just in continuous learning. We also put money into quality assurance. And that's surprisingly hard to do in the state, in other systems. But all of that also does cost money that does have to be, that to keep the lights on, you have to get back. So as 𝗏𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻 has indicated, it does lead to a two-tier system, unfortunately.
Right. And 𝗏𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻, you were essentially a user looking for that access, right, with a very specific problem. I mean, open heart surgery for an infant. Where did you even start?
We were very fortunate. So number one, we caught it prenatal, so we caught it at 16 weeks. I won't name the hospital that we delivered at because they kind of bumped the scan on the delivery date. So they said, oh, no problem, no issue. You can, check up on it in a month. And we called 𝗓𝗏𝗵𝗏 at the 𝗕𝗵𝗺𝗵𝗺 Foundation, a foundation where we've supported other children getting access to heart surgeries. And he says, you got to go see the head of cardiology at the University of Medicine and Pharmacy, which is a public hospital, but a top-tier public hospital, doing as good of work as any other university hospital in the United States. And so we met with the head of cardiology there, when she was 1 week old, and you could hear a pin drop in the room. It was they were scanning the heart, and they took me aside, and they said, "You're going to have to operate." And I said, "When?" They're like, "Immediately." And I said, "Okay, no, literally, when are we going to have to operate?" And that started our process. But they said it was complicated because it was a large hole combined with other multiple holes. And they said, "We want to refer you to the Heart Institute, VNTIM, which is where they first started the pediatric cardiology in the country in the 90s through Dr. Alain Carpentier, a French doctor that came here that built a cardiology practice for pediatrics in the 90s. Eric, this place is like going back into time. It's in an old French colonial building. You walk in, people are sleeping underneath trees. Thousands of people come through the doors every single day. And the shock of this was overwhelming. And I felt terribly guilty because I cut the queue, didn't even register, just called the surgeon because of the introduction I had. And they immediately saw me, gave me a consultation, in front of the hundreds that have already shown up there. And that started our process for surgery. And so that kind of amplifies, what I look at and I describe as inequities. Just because I know somebody doesn't necessarily mean that I should have preferential access. And so this is what was the big eye opener for me, and started me on my journey for looking at opportunities of how to transform the industry.
Right. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that, August. Dr. Mason, you are the author of the weekly AmCham COVID-19 updates, and have, with your long experience here, seen the pre and during COVID phases within the Vietnamese healthcare industry. What are some of the largest changes to it that you have seen come about by the pandemic?
Well, like most earth-shaking global events, Vietnam is part and parcel of everything that's happening. The things happening here are things that have happened to many, if not most, other countries. And what we do know from every other pandemic that our world has experienced is that the new normal will not be the old normal. There will be unforeseen changes for Vietnam and the world as well. Many of those are going to be good changes. And a lot of that is why we're here today, because I think that from the experience of this trial by fire, that that the government has gone through and being forced to digitize a lot of things, that this process will continue. But the transition during the pandemic has been a little rocky. The hybrid method that was used of using fairly modern digital methodology, but it was computerized with manual input. This led to significant errors. There were as many as 700,000 errors or mix-ups just in computerizing vaccine records and issuing the green cards. There were at one time 12 different cell phone apps, smartphone apps, that related to different aspects from different ministries of the pandemic. That's now been condensed into 2. But that said, the COVID information system that the government developed, the 𝗕𝗏𝗄 system, was as accurate as most countries have been, and it was promptly tabulated and, again, quite accurate information for us. Now, the government and the governed both are used to the rapid digital information that's available, especially during the lockdown. The only source of health information that we had was really some form of digital. And people got used to this interaction and this process. The other thing that we saw is that people also became much more aware of health issues. So we will see digitization will come much more easily and quickly as a consequence of the pandemic. Now, the private sector that we've been discussing has been, I think, more digitized and has been using electronic health records and other systems for several years that have eluded the state system. But what the private sector has done is we provided mobile digitized home care, telehealth, and hopefully we're using our data more effectively to analyze our patients. And this trend will continue, as well as enhanced patient to physician communication, which is now technically facilitated, as Beth is doing. The so-called UpDoc system that we have at Victoria gives every patient complete access to their records and an inside line to texting or emailing their doctor. So physician-patient communication is enhanced using the technology and brought about even more rapidly by the pandemic. And the new health consciousness combined with the familiar digital habits of most people now, it's going to lead to a surge of healthcare technology that's going to be quite widely distributed, I believe. In other ways, the pandemic will ultimately improve healthcare. There'll be better utilization of mobile and outpatient care. There's going to be more responsibility given to the individual patient, more direct-to-consumer healthcare applications among several patient-facing improvements in the technology, as I see it.
Nice. Thanks. So on the back of that, Dr. Mason, in Sweden, we usually have the winter vomiting disease. And last winter, it was down by more than 90% of cases, actually, because of the hand hygiene that was brought about by the pandemic. So that's one positive externality, I think. And just to reiterate, the 2 apps everyone needs is the Docosan app and then the app that shows the vaccination status. So good to have that.
Yes.
So Hawkins, you're an investment professional turned healthcare change maker through an impactful and personal experience that you shared about before. And you've also worked with a bunch of founders like Chris Blank, you mentioned before, from a city, obviously superstar, super success story. What, in your view, are some areas for entrepreneurs and startups to offer innovative solutions and new ways to solve old problems within health tech?
Oh man, it's like the whole investment thesis, right?
Right.
I'm going to disappoint everybody, I'm going to approach this from a different angle. So first, why? then who, then what? So you asked me a question that's like, what should people be looking at? And we could talk about that. But to be honest with you, if you're an entrepreneur in the space, it doesn't really matter. What I think is most fundamental is why and who. Why are you doing it? Because there's going to be a point down the road where it gets dark and lonely and you wake up and you feel like the sky is falling on your head. And if you don't have that bigger why, that bigger vision that you're striving for, something that you really stand for in the future that will pull you out of a rut, it doesn't matter what you do. So I think that why is really important. And also with a compelling why, it'll draw you to people around you. And that's the who. And so you're lucky if you get good co-founders that you can surround yourselves with that can be with you developing whatever it is that you want to develop. And with a big vision, a compelling why, you're going to be able to attract talent. And everybody needs talent. I'm sure Beth is recruiting. I'm sure Dr. Mason has gone through ups and downs of recruiting. It's the who, and then the what. And if you surround yourself with really incredible people, the what will change. The what will constantly evolve. And, if we talk about right now, like what's hot, to be honest with you, I think telehealth and digital health is a little bit overinflated. I might be, speaking to an audience that is mostly focused on that. I see, I think having guiding lights driven by a why, patient first, Dr. Mason said it, keep your patients at the core, be customer centric, be focused on real problems. You can be looking at underlying health problems, whether it's, the big killers out there, cardiovascular disease, oncology is going to start becoming really big. You have other therapeutic areas that are a worthy cause. And the what will evolve. And, healthcare is a hard industry. It's not a pure direct to consumer type of business. It often involves, some sort of mixture of B2B, B2B2C type of go-to-market strategies and working across an ecosystem. Healthcare is a unique industry where it's an ecosystem. You have primary care providers, you have telehealth guys, you have the hospitals that are there for acute surgeries, in-home care, the pharmacies, et cetera. It's very rare to see, a behemoth occupying the entire ecosystem. You start to see those types of platforms in China and elsewhere, but it's more of an ecosystem that requires partnership across multiple stakeholders, which is one of the kind of original ideas around Reimagining Healthcare, which is essentially a nonprofit group that would allow us to pull stakeholders into a room to reimagine what's possible and to transform across different companies.
So Beth, from your perspective, what just touching upon what Hawkins just shared. So I'm sure your why hasn't changed, but your what may have changed throughout the Docosan story. Can you share if examples of that maybe?
Yeah, so I think the what is constantly changing, just like Hawkins said. And I'm glad that when we first started Docosan, we didn't come in with a lot of kind of preconceived notions of what we were trying to do. Ultimately, we knew that we had this problem in accessing healthcare. We knew that there was a problem for doctors and clinicians to build their practices and for patients to find the right provider. And so when we first launched, we kind of looked at different models in other countries. We saw like ZocDoc in the US, Doctolib in France, the big behemoths that you talked about in China, and thought of, okay, what if we kind of make one of these and tailor it to the Vietnamese system? And so we launched this very basic version of a calendar that the provider could enter their schedule into, and then the patient could book an appointment with them. And so we released this kind of like minimum viable product, and we saw very quickly no one was willing to pay for this. We wanted to have a monthly service fee that the doctors would use to in exchange for this like software that helped them manage their schedule, complete all these like improve all this efficiency in their systems, but just SaaS wasn't the business model that they wanted. And so then we switched over to a commission model, and so then they were willing to pay for that, pay for success of like patients that were going to them. And then, the same thing on the patient end too. Most patients aren't willing to just kind of like book an appointment based off of stuff that they read online. They want to have more touch points with the providers before them. So they want to talk to a customer service agent. They want to know specifics of the exact type of healthcare service that they need. And so we're just constantly listening to our customers, both on the provider and the patient end, and it's changing, it's growing. And I think our ability to really to succeed, and the reason that we've been able to grow so fast, it's only been a year and a half since we launched our platform, is because we're constantly listening. And so totally agree with Hawkins that the what constantly changing, but the why, we have our North Star in improving access to healthcare.
Amazing. Hey, dear panelists, we're going to move into questions from the audience. Whilst we ask them we have questions coming in already. Whilst we ask them to do so, let's take just a little breather and is there anything? So Beth, I know you are recruiting on Docosan. Hawkins, any help you need? Dr. Mason, any shout outs you want to do before we go into audience Q&A?
Sure. So if anyone is interested in Docosan and what we're building, if you want to grab a coffee, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Super happy to connect and chat with you guys. And then we're always looking for passionate people to join our team, especially so if you have talents in healthcare and technology, you really want to solve this problem along with us, just reach out, and I would love to hear from you.
Great. Hawkins, Dr. Mason, anything from you before we take the first question, or are you guys ready to go straight into Q&A?
I think we're pretty ready to go. Again, I think as a result of the pandemic, there's been more reliance on digital, more integration of healthcare, and most importantly, people are more concerned about their health. So I think this is now fertile ground to really develop a much better healthcare system.
Right. Okay, first question comes from LinkedIn from Mr. Troy, and is specifically for Hawkins. Thank you for sharing your personal story, your motivation behind reimagining healthcare. From the workshop in April, there were 9 big ideas. Could you comment on the progress of those ideas? Which is the most promising and why?
Wow, that's straight out the gate, holding us to be true. So thanks, Troy. I appreciate the question. For those, a bigger context, Reimagining Healthcare, we convened 40 industry professionals into a conference room in April of 2021. This was probably the last in-person event I did before COVID lockdowns, et cetera. And we went through this design thinking process that generated 432 ideas, which we condensed into kind of 9 big concepts, and then created some priorities around that. Things like the 𝗵𝗵𝗺, a mobile mobile to provide breast cancer screenings in rural areas, living with cancer communities, a super app, a healthcare super app, public-private partnerships for healthcare, healthcare at home, healthcare heroes, medical education for healthcare professionals, all really innovative stuff. The intention of the workshop was never for us to do the ideas. And ideas are only as good as their execution. That said, I met with my partners for our first in-person meeting in a very long time earlier this week. And we are really excited about taking at least one of these ideas into reality. And that's actually the 𝗵𝗵𝗺. It's something that's bite-sized. It doesn't really conflict with other people's kind of commercial business operations, would do it as a charitable organization and endeavor. It's been done before. You're not trying to recreate the wheel, just recreate a bus. So if you're interested and have any insights on that, hit me up on LinkedIn. We're going to hopefully get the bus rolling next year.
That sounds amazing. And to follow up on that, Dr. Mason, anything of those areas that Hawkins brought up that you think stand out more than others for any particular reason?
It sounds like all the ideas definitely have merit, but in my estimation, you have really chosen exactly the right one, the 𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗵𝗺. As you probably know, October is known as Pinktober, Breast Cancer Awareness Month. As a matter of fact, during this very time, there's a women's leadership meeting at from AmCham, at which we're presenting Victoria's presenting breast cancer awareness. Just for example, a breast tumor, breast cancer that's detected before it can be palpated is a so-called stage 0. The survival on that is greater than 90%. What is the average survival for breast cancer in Vietnam today? It's about 40%. The reason for that is because most are discovered at stage 3. That is, it's not just a lump in the breast, it's also already spread to the regional lymph nodes. And so to bring about the awareness as well as the utilization, I think will do wonders. Also, nobody's quite sure if it's having babies later, if it's eating a more westernized diet, if it's having a higher % body fat. But the changes that Vietnam and its women are going through as we become more affluent, also for some reason leads to more breast cancer. So this is exactly the right thing that you're doing.
Amazing. Beth, before we go to next question, any comments from you?
Yeah, I think women's health in general is an area that's often overlooked, and I think it's fantastic that that's what you guys are choosing to focus on. These kind of things can be really difficult to talk about. People can be really shy, afraid of expressing anything about it, and so like oftentimes they're more willing to look online. They're more willing to kind of have like a tailored approach to it. So I think I think it's really great that you're focusing on this.
Great.
I now have to make it real that I've publicly communicated to the world that we're doing it. So we're doing it. Let's go.
You are the one talking about how important execution is. So step up to the plate, Hawkins, and execute. Next question comes from Theta. This is too long for the whole one to be captured, unfortunately, but they're talking about launching Care Now. This is actually from Antler's Singapore cohort. Care Now, Pay Later, which is buy now, pay later model for healthcare. Their goal is to democratize access and choices for healthcare, in particular for elective and preventative medical procedures. Vietnam, Philippines, and Myanmar are the target markets due to the high out-of-pocket healthcare expenses. We would be great to have a better understanding on the potential for this, and then we lost the rest of the question. But I think it's a valid question. Anyone wants to take a stab at it first?
Speaking from the standpoint of a provider, again, healthcare, if you look at it in terms of retail commerce, and again, I'd rather look at it in terms of what we do for each individual patient. But there is an economic framework of retail, B2C. And we're just now gravitating away from a cash economy in Vietnam. It does turn out that about 50% of expenses are paid out of pocket, although now 85% of people are covered under the state system. But the state system will pay the Vietnamese dong equivalent of about $3 per visit. And quite honestly, to have the best doctors in the best trained way in an efficient system with the latest technology in terms of radiology, lab, etc., we can't do that for $3 or $4. Would we like to be able to do it for everybody? Yes, we would. And I think this would be a way of doing it. I guess the question would be, how does it work, the buy now, pay later? That is, there's obviously some kind of a fee, an interest charge. Is that paid by the provider or by the patient? Is it split? How is that done? But I think the concept itself is a good concept, and it's worth looking into further.
Mm. Interesting. Hawkins, Beth, any points of view from you guys?
I have a point of view on it. I haven't really thought about buy now, pay later applied to healthcare. I have this knee-jerk reaction of, this is kind of what I'm talking about, of not having a why and just thinking about a what. And, buy now, pay later seems to be a hot trend in investment. So, let's just apply it to healthcare. There may be something there. My first reaction was, isn't this kind of like health insurance, just so to speak, although you pay for health insurance up front? I definitely think that there's a lot to deal with on the payment side. Health insurance, private health insurance is minuscule in Vietnam. It's just starting to come up, and premiums are so small. It doesn't cover much. The average premium is about $200. So what does that really cover? And people treat their health insurance like a wallet rather than protection. So when they buy it, the reason why the health insurance guys aren't making any money is because if they buy health insurance, they use all of the premium. And so the margins left over for the insurer are minimal. So I definitely think that there's things to innovate around on the payer model, and buy now, pay later, decentralization of insurance for improved healthcare inside of a provider ecosystem could be interesting.
Yeah, and I think it could be helpful for care completion and compliance too, because one of the issues when someone gets diagnosed with a chronic disease or something that takes more than a couple of weeks or pills to address is that some months maybe you have the cash to pay for that treatment, especially if it's something expensive, and maybe you saved up or your family is chipping in. But then other months might be harder than others, and especially with the uncertainty that we have with like COVID, so many people lost their jobs. That was a huge economic shock to the system. So just having some sort of safety net or just ability, to pay for something later, so that way you don't have to go off of the medicine treatment that you're on, could be really interesting. So I think, maybe kind of going back to what Hawkins said, like look at the core problem that you're trying to address, right? So is it in continuation of treatments? Is it in insuring more people in a different way? But then see if that it kind of solves that problem, and then keep iterating and going from there.
Right.
I think that's a really good point, Beth. There's been a lot of economic hardship from the pandemic. And one of the things that we're seeing, I believe we're seeing it here, we certainly saw it in the US, and that's that preventable disease really got out of hand. The number of strokes, heart attacks, cardiac deaths all went up because it was more difficult to access care. And again, Hawkins, you've talked about the way the state system works, which is, it's frankly not very compelling for a person to want to go there and have that kind of care, although most do have to do that. But to be able to offer a higher standard of care to people who've been economically hurt, I think would be a marvelous thing, as you've suggested.
Yeah. Everyone, we'll take one more question. We have a few minutes left. So we have talked a little about the history, what the pandemic brought about. So let's pick a question looking forward a little bit. So this is from Chef Tishtan. It comes from LinkedIn. One step ahead of healthcare, what do you see happening in the preventative healthcare space? Have you seen anything exciting, or what are you excited about in that space? And it's for no one specific, so let's do popcorn. Whoever wants to pop and answer this question, please go ahead.
Well, frankly, that's one that I like to think about as my strike zone. It's something that I feel quite passionately about. If we look at what we call healthcare, at least up to this point, it's sick care. You go to the doctor because you feel sick. If you're a little bit ahead of the curve in Vietnam, every year you go to the doctor for so-called preventive health care. But what's preventive health care the way the way that was defined. Preventive health care in that setting is we try to find that if there's something wrong with you, if we don't find very much, come back in a year. That is not health. Health is every breath you take, it's every beat of your heart, and it's something that can be improved. Anybody who's exercising, eating the right diet, you already know what that does for your overall health, what it does for your sense of well-being. So I think that where we need to go, where the frontier, and Victoria's venturing in this way, is that we need to look at the things that will maintain your health. What can you do actively? The other part of that is the old sick care system is very passive. You go to the doctor and the doctor says, well, your numbers are this or that. Here's what I want you to do. Yes, doctor. Okay, fine. I'll see you in a year. That's very passive. Active is you are taking care of yourself, hopefully with the guidance of healthcare professionals. So we're really, in a way, turning the old model over on its head and looking at really what can this being who is me, physical, emotional, and intellectual, what can I do to be a better me? And a lot of it does have to do with the guidance that you can get to develop as a healthier person. So I think that's a really key question, and people are moving in that direction, especially with the interest in health that's come about because we've all faced the pandemic.
Yeah, and I can tell you about a couple of ways that Docosan is working to improve preventive health in Vietnam too. So if you look at the kind of typical system in which people face when they're trying to find a healthcare provider, it's really frustrating. Maybe you don't know where to go, you use word of mouth, you ask a bunch of people, you look on Google. It's very frustrating. It can be expensive. Maybe you go to a public health system. We often go there and interview patients to find out like what their experience is like, and often they're there for 4 hours plus. They see a doctor for 2 minutes, and so you just say, I give up. Like, why bother like trying to deal with this whole kind of thing when it's so much easier? I just go to the pharmacy, I'll take some medicine, I'll self-treat, I'll see if it gets better, right? And so it's this whole kind of like issue where it's so difficult to kind of like find even the right doctor that you just wait for things to get worse and worse and worse. And so you self-treat, and sometimes that makes you way more worse even quicker. And so then by delaying care so much, you end up having a worse health outcome because like your condition is deteriorated in that period of time that you have not gone to see a doctor. So so helping to improve like the overall access and transparency of the system, making it a lot easier to get a doctor offline. But then there's also online methods too. And I think that these have become so much more popular during the COVID pandemic because people were literally stuck inside. You can actually go and travel on your motorbike to go to the hospital even if you wanted to. But you could hop onto a consultation with a doctor, to put a fingertip in your pocket. And so more and more doctors started adopting these new telemedicine platforms, and they're there to give advice. And maybe you have a health anxiety about something, or you're wondering if you should bother to go and get this check. Maybe you spend like $50K and you get a consultation with a registered doctor online, and then you can find out, okay, I feel better. I don't need to worry about this, or okay, maybe I should go to the clinic and get this checked out and make an appointment and deal with that. And then I'm also seeing from a lot of the private healthcare providers, just kind of like health checks and screening packages, which are interesting. So there's some that are like, cancer preventative packages and like prenatal like packages and stuff that you can get that really emphasize primary care and preventing diseases before they happen. So I think there's actually a lot going on in this space, even though it's not directly labeled preventative healthcare.
And Hawkins, you obviously are going to drive your bus down to around the country preventing within preventative healthcare for specifically for breast cancer.
I think it's a great question. And in fact, if it weren't for COVID-19, we wouldn't even be having the conversation. I think COVID-19 has caused everyone around the globe, and including the Vietnamese, to be more conscientious of their health. It's just been put in front of their face. We humans, we live, if we're lucky, most of us live 98, 99% of our lives healthy and not in hospitals. But COVID-19 really forced us to be living with it 99% of our lives with this just in front of our face all day long. I think there's three things. One, I'm going to do a plug on my Gene Solutions guys. I think genetic testing is a great avenue for more advanced, innovative, preventative health. I'm not a huge believer in the lifestyle, genealogy type of stuff, but there's things that are coming that I think will be really exciting. And also earlier detection. So, these guys are working on some early cancer detection, liquid biopsies that, if commercialized, will help kind of transform that space. They're already successful in reproductive health with NIPT testing, carrier screening, things like this. So I think the genetic space is going to be transformative to the healthcare industry overall. So watch that. Number two, something that's unique to Vietnam are corporate health checks. So this whole thing is a boondoggle. It's absolutely ridiculous corporate health checks, the mandatory corporate health checks from the government. But they could be so much smarter. They could be so much smarter. The fact that you get everybody to go in annually, to go in and screen, and to really nurture that rather than just like a pure factory throughput, but really having a patient first mindset and having some continuity with the underlying patient, giving us access to our diagnostics, opening up our access to our healthcare records. I think that's really important. And lastly, third, on preventative care, what I really find the space of, you got people that are healthy and helping them prevent them from being sick, but you also have sick people with chronic diseases that, whether it be diabetes or other underlying conditions, helping them getting more sick and helping them live with the disease that they have and preventing them from, being hospitalized, et cetera. And I think that there's really exciting things going on in that space. So, but, it's just starting to come about. How many million people are living with diabetes in Vietnam? I think it's like 6 million people, 2/3 of which are undiagnosed. And so really getting up underneath that and chronic diseases that, and preventing people from getting more sick and hospitalized. So those are the three areas that I think are exciting about the preventative health space.
On the topic of diabetes, type 2 diabetes also, we saw that has been on the rise in China, just in the introduction of the combination of more animal protein combination with the fast carbs, and something that we're looking at as well, I think, is on the increase in here in Vietnam. So that's something I personally would also like to see a little bit more information in. Amazing. So we're coming to the end of today's webinar. I want to pose a massive thank you to Dr. Mason Cobb, Beth Lopez, and Hawkins Phan for joining today's webinar. Just to reiterate, if anyone want to jump on Hawkins' bus to help do breast cancer screening throughout the country, it's leaving hopefully in the next quarter. If you haven't downloaded Beth's app yet, it's Docosan. Go to the App Store immediately. And also, she is hiring, so please ping her on LinkedIn. And of course, if you want access to great healthcare, Victoria Healthcare is ready to take your call. Dr. Mason Cobb, not maybe personally, but one of his amazing staff that is trained very well. Thank you again, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, for the great questions. Hope we can do this soon again. And everyone stay safe and have a great continued Thursday.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, everyone, for your attention. I do see one question over here. Please feel free to contact me, and I'll get back to you on that question regarding medical education.
Perfect. Will do.
So
thank
you.
I'll connect. Thanks, everyone.